Hi folks, Mercury goes retrograde on March the 14th, and I think it is time for me to do a video talking about it. Some of the stuff I'm going to share we've been talking about in prior videos, but I have some other stuff that I've got here that I think we need to just, at the outstart of Mercury retrograde, just put a little bit of energy into preparing ourselves for the next 3.5 weeks. First thing, because I want to minimize my ramp up time in these videos, and I want to get through all sort of housekeeping in the first couple of minutes so we can get to the video. There are 3 ways to engage with me. Free content posted on the channel, the members only part of the channel, which is $6.99 a month, I think, where you can get access to sign specific videos. And I would recommend that you see them for your rising sign or your ascendant sign. If you like to see them for your sun, moon, Venus, whatever sign, that's fine. That's up to you. But it's the rising sign that is the one that you should watch if you become a member. So that takes the content one level more specific. And then the third is you can do a personal reading with me, and my email address and information on how to be a member is in the description box below. You can email me at the email address and I can give you information. There are 2 specials I'm running right now. A 30 to 40 minute $50 special around one topic, one question, one area of focus, and then a 60 to 75 minute $100 reading on the astrology of February, March, and April, even to the end of the first week of June, that focuses on the Mercury and Venus retrogrades and the eclipses. Okay? Thank you for letting me get that out there. It's important I do it on top of the video as opposed to wait till the end. Number 2, I'm going to be doing less ramp-ups and summaries of where we are. Again, because I've received some feedback that and it's not that just because someone has given me feedback that I need to jump on it. I think it's fair. I think that because I'm trying to cater to people who are watching my videos regularly and those folks who for whom this might be the first video, there's a tendency for 10-15 minutes to kind of summarize where we are. And all I'm going to say to you guys is, if you find this content relevant or interesting or worth spending more time on, and you want greater context, just work your way backwards or take a look at my most recent videos and see what applies. The new moon in Pisces video, because we are in the month of Pisces and March is a month of taking disciplined, responsible action to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, would be a great place to start. The full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo video would also be very relevant because that's where we're at right now. Talking about the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, I'm going to assume that you guys are feeling the topsy-turviness of the energy. There's typically an escalation of anxiety, sleeplessness. Things feel like, oh my God, how am I going to get everything done? Will I get this done? Will I get that done? Irritability, irritation. We're still over 24 hours away from the full moon. So today on the 12th and the 13th, I expect the full moon energy to increase and intensify. For me, the full moon is at night, close to midnight Pacific time. You can translate that to whatever it means for you from a timing perspective and a time zone perspective where you are. So just know that. And then the full moon occurs, and as I've told you before, the week after the full moon is often the most productive time, the most productive energy to get things done. We have a moon that is still relatively full, and so we have the emotional and intuitive energy, but the dials are not being turned up, and we're not quite so highly strung. All the full moon lunar eclipse videos for the rising signs are now done, so they are available to you should you choose to check them out in the membership channel. And you can also just be a member for a month or 2 or 3 and check out the content and decide whether you want to stick with it or not. So all that content is done now as well. Now, Mercury retrograde in Aries at about 9 or 10 degrees and then into Pisces. The first thing I want to remind you is, and this is a little bit esoteric, but I do want to point this out to you for those of you for whom this resonates. The current Mercury cycle that we're in is the Mercury cycle in Sagittarius, related to the Sagittarius part of the chart. From December 5th to March 24th, we have a Mercury cycle in Sagittarius. A Mercury cycle starts when a retrograde Mercury conjuncts with the sun, and the sign in which that conjunction happens starts a Mercury cycle. And I've described this to you guys before. It's like a drumbeat of energy where a certain amount of communication, transactions, interviewing, selling, resumes, auditions, communication, commuting, community, a certain kind of in the background. It's one of the most constructive, productive energies where the power of communication allows you to put some focus and build something or build towards something in the Sagittarius part of the chart at this point in time. The Mercury cycle that starts on March the 24th is going to be the Mercury cycle in Aries, when a retrograde Mercury and the sun are going to conjunct in Aries. This means that from the time when Mercury is retrograde on the 14th or 15th, depending on where you are, and March the 24th, if you have to take steps to finalize, close out, because a lot of people will sometimes say, oh, Mercury is retrograde, Mercury is stationary, I don't want to take any action, I don't want to launch anything, I don't want to complete anything. But a retrograde Mercury heading towards the sun can be a great time to end, put finishing touches around, process learnings around, close out that last Mercury cycle. I monetized my channel when Mercury retrograde was moving towards, there are things that I completed at around that time, because I had a Mercury cycle related to my 6th house when it happened, or, whatever that is. Now, just because I did that doesn't mean you have to do it. You can use your judgment. But one of the things that's going to happen between March the 14th, 15th, and 24th is that you're going to be closing out, completing, putting the finishing touches, finishing up this Mercury cycle in Sagittarius. And on the 24th, the Mercury cycle in Aries will start. And a Mercury cycle has 4 phases. Mercury retrogrades, conjuncts the sun. Mercury continues to retrograde. To Mercury retrograde conjuncting the sun to Mercury going direct is phase 1. Mercury direct to the superior conjunction with the sun when Mercury is direct and conjuncts the sun is phase 2. Mercury conjuncts the sun, moves forward from the sun to the time it goes retrograde is phase 3. Then when it goes retrograde to conjunct the sun and makes its inferior conjunction with the sun is phase 4. So we're going to be building, communicating something in the Aries part of the chart starting March the 24th. And indeed, we're going to have the solar eclipse in Aries on March the 29th, the energy of which will be felt all the way to the end of the first week of June. It's the first thing I want to mention. And this is something we have not brought up, so this was specific content that I wanted to alert you to energetically in the middle of everything that's going on. Keep in mind that very recently, what was it, yesterday, today, when was it? Give me one sec. He says very recently. What does very recently mean, Abby? Oh, good golly. On the 11th, yesterday, a retrograde Mercury conjuncted Venus in Aries. Even though you are in a place right now, this is kind of that weekly overview energy, but I want to give you a reminder because we're so focused with this full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo. I feel a little weird doing this video a day before the full moon lunar eclipse because I feel like all your energy should be in the full moon lunar eclipse. But as I've said, I have the new moon and Pisces video out there. I have the weekly overviews out there. I have other videos I've done. I have the full moon lunar eclipse video out there. You can take a look at them. You can take a look at the general content, which is pretty comprehensive. You can take a look at the rising sign content if you're interested. All that content is there for you to tap into. That can put you in the space of the stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart and start to and get you going with regard to the eclipse energy that we're in. And with the full moon lunar eclipse tomorrow, remember that it's the week before Jan the 13th and week after Jan the 13th, where some of the tectonic plates could have shifted or the real feeling of change needing to be created could have occurred that has just been gathering momentum till now. It is very interesting to me that the ruler of tomorrow's full moon lunar eclipse is Mercury. And at the time of the full moon lunar eclipse, Mercury is stationary, getting ready to go retrograde. And the full moon in April, which is around April the 12th, I think, or 13th in Libra, happens when Venus is stationary, the ruler of Libra, getting ready to move forward. So we have two full moons. You can't make this stuff up, where the ruler of the full moon is stationary. The first one, the ruler is getting ready to go retrograde. The second one, the ruler is getting ready to go direct. So with these full moons, the things that are brought up, they may be brought up. There could even be some confusion. There could even be a feeling that the compass is spinning and there's no complete direction. But there's a lot of room for showing up. Remember, that was what my weekly overview was about, and taking responsible action and proactive action. So you're not on the receiving end, because this full moon opposes the sun and Saturn, so that you're not on the receiving end of some consequence that is unwelcome because you haven't gotten on top of stuff you need to take care of. All that can be the weekly overview, the full moon video, the new moon video. You can look at that and that can get developed. But it is interesting that Mercury is stationary. So that gives me the feeling that until we get to that, as I've said to you before, until we get to that new moon in Taurus at the end of April, it's very likely that clean flow, forward moving, where things start to move, doesn't really start to happen until then. That doesn't mean that this time and next month's time is not important. It is extremely important to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart so you can move forward in the Aries part of the chart and take advantage of the experiences that are meant to be more exciting for you and meant to make you grow in the Aries, Taurus, and Gemini parts of the chart. And I've been talking about this for such a long time, so I'm going to leave that alone. Mercury retrogrades, yes, and especially the time around Mercury retrogrades. Even while I've been doing these videos in the rising sign, all sorts of silly things have happened where I set an alarm and the alarm goes off in the middle of recording a video, and so it automatically stops the video. So I start the video and then I have to edit them together and I have to upload them. And when I upload them, it's daylight savings time, so YouTube has this feature where you upload it at a certain time, but I set the time, but the time automatically goes back an hour, and so I can't get out of that loop, and all these kinds of weird Mercury retrograde things have been occurring. They might intensify over the next 48 to 72 hours. They might intensify as you head into the weekend. Showing up at the wrong time for something, missing your flights, missing your trains, miscommunications around where an Uber or Lyft should pick you up, and then you miss that. Delays, even when you leave time for them. Traffic jams. Mercury forcing you to slow down. And our life is not designed for us to slow down. Losing bags, losing, all that kind of technology breakdowns, all those kinds of Mercury shenanigans. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. Most of the people who come to these videos are familiar with that energy. The two things, if ever I meet someone, the three things actually, that if ever I meet someone that is an astrology skeptic, I always say, well, see what is said about Mercury retrograde, whether it works out to be true for you or not. Number two, see what the energy is like around new moons and full moons and back to new moons, and see if you resonate with that energetically or not. And number three, I always say, where's the North Node in your birth chart? And see if the strategies associated with that resonate for you or not. Those are the three things. If someone's like, well, I don't know about this astrology stuff, I say, well, why don't you just pay attention to these energies and see if that resonates for you? I'm not going to try and convince you, but those are three immediate things that can really make you kind of sit up and go, oh, is there some truth to this? Most importantly, and people who've been watching my videos know this, and this is what I want you to be prepared for. Mercury retrograde, sometimes around the time when Mercury is going retrograde and sometimes when Mercury is going direct. The three times when the Mercury retrograde is felt most intensely is Mercury going retrograde, Mercury going direct. That's the most intense. And when a retrograde Mercury conjuncts the sun and is combust, March 24th. When Mercury is direct, we have a tendency to move forward, and based on our forward momentum, it is natural for us to make assumptions about what the outcome in certain situations is going to be. And when the personal planets, especially Mercury, is moving forward, it's very natural for us to use the momentum of where we think it's like a billiard ball or a snooker ball, or or a pool. When you play pool, you think that this is going in a certain direction, and you go along with it in your mind, in your imagination. You predict. It's a human thing. And Mercury says, no, 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 no. You do not know all the facts on this. I need to reverse. And for the 3 weeks that Mercury is retrograde, he wants to give you the facts about something, some future, something that you have been envisioning, so that you can tell whether you're building your future on pillars of sand or not, whether you're putting your eggs in the right basket or not. Very often these realizations can be a little bit shocking, disappointing, because we're expecting that job to come through. Everything looks like it's going to be that, or that thing to work out, or this to be the outcome, or that to be the outcome. Because naturally, what else? Why would it not? Everything is pointing towards it. And then all of a sudden we learn something. The archetypal example I give is, you've been interviewing, you had a first round, you had a second round, everyone is making up these scenarios about how great everything is, and all of a sudden you realize that there's that one interviewer who has a favorite internal candidate. Or there's been some political situation that's been brewing that you did not know about, and everyone was getting swept up in the forward movement, but guess what? It's not coming to you. Or you've moved forward with a certain momentum, thinking that a certain something is going to be what someone has said it is, and you go and you realize, oh my God, this is not... Mercury is not in favor of this. Mercury is like, no, 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 not yet. You've got to go back. You're not done yet. You can't move forward this way. And sometimes it's revealing the politics of a situation. Sometimes, and very often, sometimes it can happen that when Mercury is going retrograde, something comes up, and then when Mercury is going direct, it sort of gets wrapped up. So I have come to now, after all this time, I can tell you that Mercury retrograde, even last August, just shocked the living daylights out of me. It was so clear. I was just like, I'm an astrologer. I know this. And yet, the other thing that happens is, over time, when you look back, you're just like, what was I thinking? How would that have worked exactly? It would have been so... It was totally wrong. Totally right to pursue it, totally exciting, totally expansive, but totally wrong. So in retrospect, you might look back at Mercury and say, you did me a favor. Now, if you find yourself in a pickle, it is not unusual when Mercury is retrograde to say, here's an alternative. And it can be tempting, particularly when you have Mercury direct in the birth chart and Mercury's retrograde, and you are in overthinking mode, and you're not quite... It can be tempting to say, well, this has come through, or this is a way forward, or what is this? And to be irritated, and to be... Because you're dealing with the fact that something that you thought was moving forward in a certain way has come to a screeching halt. And so whatever comes through is looked at as a second or a third best. Or it's disappointing or irritating because the momentum that has been going in a certain place means that you've got to like shift lanes. So that's irritating. Plans have to be remade. You have to go back to the drawing board. It's annoying. And it's extremely frustrating. The other thing that happens, but please, just go back and trust your judgment with regard to what intuitively feels right and what signs you feel you are getting with regard to whether or not you should avail of that alternative or stay on the route that you currently are on, which looks like it's a little bit shaky, or looks like it may not make sense, or all of that. Because the alternative, here's the thing with the alternative. This goes back to this idea that you should never agree to something or sign something or take something or agree to something when Mercury is retrograde. In general, especially if you have Mercury retrograde, especially if you have Mercury direct in your birth chart at the time of your birth, it is very likely that anything you agree to when Mercury is retrograde will change, or the details related to it will get modified once Mercury goes direct. So let's say something comes forward to you as an alternative to help you, and you feel like, I should take this. It's fine if it feels right to you. And the alternative A that you were building your castles and pillars of sand about has not worked out, and B shows up, and you feel like, you know what? I'm going to go with B, or I'm going to go with this thing. It gets me out of this pickle. Or, well, if this has shown up, I feel like signs have been shown that I should probably take this or do this, or I should lean in this direction. Take it. Just be aware that some details around it, and sometimes details shift not because someone is deliberately trying to hurt or harm you. It's because with Mercury retrograde, someone may think, oh, this project or this contract will take 3 months, and then all of a sudden Mercury goes direct, and within 2 or 3 days it's just like, I'm so sorry, this is going to be like 45 days, or this is going to be 8 months, or and it's just like, are you kidding me? I made these decisions, I agreed to do this because I thought I would make so much money, and now you're telling me that this project is going to be half the time, and what am I going to do? And Mercury, but you might overlook the fact that this came up is a godsend, because that other thing that you were hoping or thinking was going to come through is not coming through. And the fact that it's only for 45 days also may be a godsend. You don't know about that yet. And also, once a new moon occurs, when Mercury is direct, April 27th onwards, everything related to everything that has been in this jumble will start to flow. It can sometimes even be that you agree to something, and even the money around it is kind of depending on the houses in your chart that Mercury rules. So it's just kind of, and then all of a sudden as time goes and Mercury starts to gather momentum, it's like, oh, I did make the right decision. I did take the right thing. And yes, it did get adjusted. And no, it was not personal. And no one was trying to hurt me or harm me. It's just that sanity set in, and we were more rational about how we were planning things as Mercury went direct. And everything about that is now leading to a certain amount of flow and abundance. So just because something comes through that you have to commit to while Mercury is retrograde doesn't mean that you shouldn't commit to it. Sometimes if you're like, I'm not committing to anything until Mercury goes direct, you might lose the opportunity. Sometimes you might be in such a pickle because you've jumped into something or thinking that something's going to happen and it doesn't. You're just like, this has come through? Okay, I don't know what this is, and it's annoying that I have to change directions, but I'll take it. But then you're frustrated because the details on it are going to change, etc. Just start to, I would encourage anybody, Mercury retrograde is a time to keep your wits about you. I can't tell you, and quite frankly, nobody else can necessarily tell you other than from where you get your guidance and how you make your decisions with regard to whether you should take something or not take something. That is your personal process. But you don't have to be quite so black and white around whether you're going to do something or not do something, or take something or not take something, or consider something or not consider something just because Mercury is retrograde. If you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, there's nothing wrong with moving forward and taking something if it is helpful to you, or if it feels like your decision making is leading you to it and might be something worth exploring. Just keeping in mind that once Mercury is direct, something about it may shift or change. And the fact that something shifts or changes could be frustrating. I thought I'd be employed for 6 months and now you're telling me it's only 90 days. Understood. But again, be very careful of looking at sanity prevailing as good or bad or right or wrong. You might be really happy that something lasted 45 days or 90 days as opposed to 6 months by the time you get past those 3 months. because something else comes along, or you find like this is just the right thing, or this gave you exactly what you needed to, or you might be able to negotiate for more money, or the details might give you clarity and might help set the project up for success. Whereas if you moved forward for those 6 months in the way that people were thinking the project would go when Mercury was retrograde, it would not have been a success at all. So what if you're going to get 6 months pay if you're in a situation that's poorly thought out and not properly vetted? So embrace the redefinition that might occur on something that shows up when Mercury is retrograde once Mercury is direct. In certain cases, it's fair. Something may show up and you may feel like something about this is going to change. This doesn't feel right. I'm not going to do it. Your personal decision-making mechanism. But I would just say, as an astrologer, based on everything I've observed, the biggest thing that Mercury retrograde does is that it actually gives us the facts on something. Here's what's real. And that forces us to go back to the drawing board. And that doesn't mean that pursuing what we were pursuing, that we may no longer be pursuing, was a waste of time. It does not. That's not for you to, you are not designing every moment of your life. You are showing up, doing the best you can, and you have no idea what is going to happen and how connections made are going to. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, have you been waiting for this? You could find that your energies are very much in sync when Mercury is retrograde with regard to making decisions. Mercury retrograde people who are born when Mercury is retrograde, tend to have their own sense of time and timing on things. Very often, these are the classic people who get very caught up, who have to be somewhere at 6 o'clock, but at 4:45, they start to get into a discussion with someone. There can be a lot of needing to discuss and a lot of processing and a lot of should I, shouldn't I, a lot of the classic placement of someone who is chronically late, or just, oh yeah, I had to be there at 2, I showed up at 2:45, but everything's okay. It was whenever I show up is the right time, or I'm so sorry, you're constantly apologizing. But it's not true of every single Mercury retrograde person. But when Mercury goes retrograde, all of a sudden I find that people have Mercury retrograde in their birth charts. This is what I'm going to do. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to move forward. This is what I'm going to say yes to. This is what I'm going to say no to. This is how I'm going to move forward. And very often, both Mercury direct and retrograde people, things come up when Mercury is retrograde that then informs how we're moving forward when Mercury is direct for about 3 months then. For Mercury retrograde people, it is a decisiveness that sets their agenda for the next 3 months when Mercury is direct. For Mercury direct people, it is a revising of their understanding of where things were headed that they then need to incorporate, and then they go forward again once Mercury goes direct for the next 3 months. I think this is important content. I think it's important to revisit this. I think it's important to be prepared. If you have to sign something and all the details were agreed to, and you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, and all the details were agreed to when Mercury was direct, and it just so happens that the paperwork is making its way to you when Mercury is retrograde, check the paperwork. When Mercury is retrograde, it's especially important to go over everything multiple times. Make sure that if it's a 10,000 signing bonus, HR hasn't accidentally put $1,000 in your offer letter that then has to be corrected and can take on a life of its own, that kind of stuff. Make sure everything is there, make sure everything's vetted, double check everything. But if the decisions were made, or the offer was made, or the details were made when Mercury is direct, and the paperwork is showing up when Mercury is retrograde, I think it's fine. As I said, between Mercury retrograde and March the 24th, especially related to the communication cycle in Sagittarius, there might be things that you decide to launch, complete, finish up, tie up. Now that doesn't have to be signing something, but you could still be taking some action to put something out there. Watch for matters related to the part of the charts that are ruled by Mercury, the Virgo and the Gemini parts of the chart, the houses occupied by Gemini and Virgo, to slow down or to show signs of confusion and reconfiguration in your chart when Mercury is retrograde. Just as when Venus is retrograde, you're looking at the Libra and the Taurus part of the chart and seeing how that is being reconfigured. And just as with Mercury retrograde, we are reconfiguring our minds, when Venus is retrograde, we are reconfiguring our values and what we value and our resources and our relationships. And we just happen to be in both those arenas. And as I said, 28 days from now, when we have the full moon in Libra, Venus will be retrograde going direct. So matters will come to a head. There may be greater visibility in the part of the chart where the full moon is occurring in both these instances, because the full moon occurs a day or so, within a day or so of, in this case, Mercury going retrograde, a month's time, Venus going direct. And matters related to these full moons that are coming up now and a month from now may really move forward towards resolution in the last couple of weeks of April and as we head out of April. Some more basic information here. Mercury enters its shadow period, its shadow degrees, on February the 28th. For anyone who's tracking this and cares, at about 27 degrees of Pisces. Mercury is retrograde on March 14th, 24 hours after the full moon. 24 hours and 2 minutes or so after the full moon, or 24 hours and 1 minute before the full, I don't know. They're very, very close, 24 hours after the full moon, at about 10 degrees of Aries. Mercury and the Sun meet up at 4 degrees of Aries on March the 24th. Mercury is direct on April the 7th, 27 degrees of Aries. And Mercury leaves its shadow degrees on April the 26th, which again takes us to that end April date. So Feb 28th to March 14th, Mercury direct in its shadow degrees between Pisces and Aries. And then Mercury again direct and in its shadow degrees from April the 7th to April the 26th, and retrograde between March 14th and April 7th. If you are in the process of making some important decisions or because we're being asked to show up and take action to stabilize the Pisces part of the chart, because it is a time of action in the Pisces part of the chart, because we have Saturn there and Neptune there, and we have the full moon tomorrow opposing Saturn, there may be, and you are showing up proactively. This is why I was encouraging you to show up as proactively as you can last week, because this week things are likely to be more complicated. Or it could be that if you're making decisions around something now, that those decisions actually get finalized or revised in a saner way after April the 7th. It could be that things are being worked through over the next 3 weeks and they may come with their level of irritation. That's not what I said. Is that what you said? Try and show up. I'm not saying agree to something that you feel you don't deserve or that doesn't make sense. So be careful of that. Because if you agree to something when Mercury is retrograde and it isn't thought through, when Mercury goes direct, you might be like, oh God, I've got to revise this agreement. That might come with its own headaches. But it could be that something or some discussions are starting up now that reach some sort of resolution or completion or cleanness only after April the 7th. And in some ways, that would be healthy, looking at the next 3 weeks to kind of vet out certain details. But there could be a quality over the next 3 weeks where the compass is spinning, where it's just like those kind of Mercury retrograde conversations that we have, as I like to say, with customer service, where you're just like, why was I on hold for 2 hours? And why am I talking to you? And you're not understanding something very simple that I'm saying. I'm telling you, I'm looking at the instructions and I'm missing this piece. And you're looking at the instructions saying that piece is called something else and isn't even here. And we're just talking, it's one of those, it's like trying to get your bags delivered to your address and they end up going somewhere else. And then all of a sudden Mercury goes direct and there they are on your doorstep. Even with matters, remember, The Mercury and Venus retrogrades are very powerfully in tune with the narrative related to the eclipses and the Pisces new moon. Both Venus and Mercury retrograde occurred at between 9 and 10 degrees of Aries. You can't move into the Aries part of the chart, where the new moon solar eclipse occurs on March the 29th. From March the 29th to June the 8th or thereabouts is an energy that connects you to the North Node solar eclipse energies that have been so strong in Aries for March, April 23. There's still something to be gotten out of the Aries Libra eclipse axis, and particularly the Aries part of the chart. It's almost like since March, April 24, you've been wanting to go in a certain direction and you haven't been able to. It's only since November, December that things have accelerated. It's really only in March and April that the action can be taken that allows you to move forward and make the most of those eclipses. And as I've said with those North Node eclipses, do not get attached to the outcome. You will know when those eclipses have done their job. You will know, oh, this is what I need to lean towards. It may have been presented to me as this and this and this, and typical North Node manner. None of that, all of that could have been important to experience, but it may not have been that concrete vision. But it's actually, this is why all that happened. But you can't get to it until you stabilize the Pisces part of the chart. Why? Because if the Pisces part of the chart is not stabilized in March and April, and past issues are not dealt with, some crisis from it just threatens to kind of spill over everything. That said, the reason why I talked about Mercury and Venus conjuncting yesterday, Venus retrograde and Mercury stationary or direct yesterday, is that there will still be forward-looking opportunities in the Aries part of the chart that will show up to say, let's start paying attention to this. And there may be something to apply for. There may be something that you feel like, oh, this is part of that energy again. There could be projects that are resuscitated, that tend to get resuscitated and discussed and talked about and get exposure and have further developments only when Mercury is retrograde. Let's say you work on something when Mercury is retrograde, or you get an offer on something that Mercury is retrograde. When Mercury is direct, it just kind of goes away. And then when Mercury goes retrograde again, it comes up again. The people come up again. The situation comes up again. So even though the primary focus in March is on stabilizing the Pisces part of the chart, do not ignore and make sure you show up to anything that is beckoning you forward, that you feel like, oh, this is part of that energy in the Aries part of the chart. Or listen, you don't even have to get that analytical about it. If it's just like, I need to apply to that, I need to show up for this, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, fine. Because it could be that once that March 29th solar eclipse happens, as you move past it, and particularly after you move past April the 7th, once Mercury goes direct, and even more after you move past April the 13th, 14th, when Venus goes direct, that these opportunities can become more concrete. Because March is the month of Pisces. After March the 29th, you move into the month of Aries till April the 27th. And just as in the month of Pisces, Venus and Mercury have spent most of their time in March in Aries, in the month of Aries, Venus will spend practically all of her time in Pisces, because they're going to retrograde back into Pisces and then go direct. So we're taking action in March in the Pisces part of the chart, moving towards resolution around them by the end of April. We are making sure we tap into and take advantage of opportunities that may feel a little bit conditional, but we're moving in the Aries part of the chart, knowing that in April, it'll be the month of Aries and we'll be taking action in the Aries part of the chart, but we're still wrapping up that Pisces energy. But we cannot move into forward, taking full advantage of that Aries eclipse and Uranus in Taurus and Jupiter finishing up his transit in Gemini till the end of the first week of June. We cannot live towards building that future until we stabilize the Pisces part and take action around that this month and deal with wrapping things up next month. Now, one more thing. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, The new moon solar eclipse on March the 29th, the week before, week after, you may feel it then. Something may come up that you're ready to make a decision on and you're ready to move on. If you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, something could come up in the Aries part of the chart week before, after March the 29th. Yes, but you're likely to get the benefit of it and the flow of it and the clarity around it only after Mercury goes direct, and especially after the new moon in Taurus as you head into May, towards the end of the first week of June. You might feel, if you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, you may feel the March 29th eclipse more the week before and after May 29th. But do not ignore something that shows up as an opportunity week before and after March the 29th, no matter whether you have Mercury direct or retrograde in your chart. It's just if you're Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, it may not need revision. It may help you make a decision. It may help you move you forward. If you have Mercury direct in your birth chart, the classic thing that I spent the beginning part of this video talking about, how you can consider taking it, just watch for details around it changing and there being greater flow on it as you head past. And particularly I find that it's when the new moon occurs, when Mercury is direct and moving forward, that starts cleaner momentum in that arena. And by the time we have the new moon in Taurus, Mercury and Venus will be direct. And Venus is the ruler of Taurus, and she will be direct. So by that time, we're really in forward movement land. If you have Mercury retrograde in your birth chart, next 3 weeks, if it finds you more decisive and it finds that you're just clicking and you're in sync with the world and you know what to do, I would say be open to that. I see that more and more with when someone with a Venus retrograde in their birth chart goes through a Venus retrograde. I will get the feedback that they really like that time, or I get this in sync energy. When people have Saturn retrograde in their birth chart, they feel Saturn's intensity more when Saturn is retrograde in the skies. When people have Jupiter retrograde in their birth chart, they experience the luck of Jupiter and the manifestation of Jupiter for those 4 months in the year when Jupiter is retrograde. They can achieve as much in those 4 months that the rest of us who have Jupiter direct in our birth charts achieve in the remaining 8. Okay, I will leave it at this, my friends. I just wanted to do this so that we can approach the next 3 weeks with some sort of direction and some sort of compass. With Mercury retrograde, the truth does set us free, even though, as the saying goes, it might piss us off. It's helpful. I have started to enjoy and look forward to, I don't enjoy and look forward to the chaos that ensues in the houses when Mercury, the Gemini and Virgo parts of my chart, when Mercury is retrograde. I don't look forward to that. I don't look forward to the general craziness. I don't look forward to this, that, or the other. I don't look forward to the delays. I don't look forward to having to say yes to something knowing that details around will change. But I do appreciate and look forward to knowing what has legs, what is real, what I can build my future on, and what I can't. And that is an enormous service that Mercury does, where it takes us down from a very natural place of fantasy into reality. This is what's going on. And everybody's acting as if we're all just so excited and we're moving towards this future and it's bound to happen. And it's like, what? Hello? Perfectly natural. And Mercury's moving forward and direct and moving fast. Things just have their own momentum. Okay, if you're interested in getting a personal reading with me, email address is in the description box below. Email me there. If you are interested in being a member, information on that is in the description box below. You can do that and see content for your rising sign. There's a new moon in Pisces video and the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces video down. I'm going to next focus on what is today? Today is Wednesday. On Friday, I think I'm going to do a video on Mars being direct. It's a video I've been wanting to do, and I think my next sign-specific videos will then take that content and do them for the rising signs. It may feel like, why are you doing this? But remember, Mars being direct in Cancer is supporting Saturn and Neptune and the North Node in Pisces. And during this time, I want to talk about for everybody, remind you what that means. And then for the rising signs. And then next week, after we have a little bit of space from this full moon lunar eclipse, I want to start talking about the new moon solar eclipse in Aries, and then do rising sign specific videos for those. Okay. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. There's a whole bell icon situation when you subscribe. On top, there's a wiggly bell option. Click on that and you'll be notified whenever I do new videos. There's a thanks button underneath this video. You can use that to contribute to the channel. Information on donating to the channel is also in the description box below. You can contribute to this channel for free by liking the video, by commenting on it. Likes and comments, if you feel so inclined, give the video greater circulation on YouTube. Am I missing anything? If you like the content, find it useful, feel free to spread the word about this channel and this content, especially if you feel somebody else will benefit from it. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you guys soon. Take care.